Listen, I'm trying to tell you. This man came up to me just a little while ago, and he said, I'm on, I think you said page 50 or something like that. And I said, well, I'm gonna try my best not to spoil it. And here you are spoiling it for yourself. Which he told me to tell you, Fahamu, to not spoil it, but I suspect. How many people here have read it all the way? Okay, cool. Cool. Okay,
y'all late to the party.
My bad, bro.
Stony, the road we trod, across the sands of time, through turbulent waves, from the bellies of beasts to underground railroads, migration, from Selma bridges to Darfur highways, from streets where we march to beats that move us, from the fire of protest to the fire of celebration, of carnival, of junkanoo, of festival, anting. If we can't walk, we run. If we can't run, we fly. We make a way to make our way. From hashtags to hand drums, from live streams to living rooms, from Lego streets to London blocks, to every corner we claim as home. Every step, a link. Every link, a lifeline. Everywhere we go, there we are, as we've always been. Stony.
Welcome. Happy, beautiful first Sunday of spring. Yeah. Yes. Atlanta weather has been good to us, even if not to our allergies, but we're going to make it. Everyone, we appreciate you taking some time out of your Sunday afternoon for this very wonderfully anticipated conversation between Dr. Fahamu Pecou and Cebo Campbell. My name is Asohe Galbraith, and I'm one of the founding board members of ADAMA. I've previously served on the board since 2018, and am blessed to serve currently as the Director of Operations. And without our wonderful staff and board members, we could not do this work, but this work would not be worthy without all of you here in attendance. So thank you again. This is our second episode of the ADAMA Arts Salon, and it's a conversation series featuring contemporary artists, curators, scholars, and cultural practitioners from across the African diaspora. Through these gatherings, we create space for critical dialogue, creative exchange, and meaningful community connection. We host the salon here at Pittsburgh Yards alongside exhibitions and other creative projects throughout the year. We're pleased to share that our current exhibition, Spinning a Yarn, is on display, featuring the artwork from our 2026 Flower and Seeds honorees, Ayana Ross and Miss Lynn Linnemeyer. If you haven't had an opportunity to take a look, please do so today. We are so blessed to have Village Books here with pre-signed copies of Sky Full of Elephants. So we hope that you'll stay for that book signing, which will go from 3 p.m. until 4 p.m. 3 p.m. until 4 p.m. 3 p.m. until 4 p.m.
You know she looked at me because she knows I'm going to be talking all the whole time. So,
and we want to make sure that you all enjoy some of this beautiful Sunday weather outside. With that, I will go into our introductions for our guest and our moderator. Cebo Campbell is a best-selling author, screenwriter, and director whose work explores identity, imagination, and the narratives that shape culture. His works have earned both critical acclaim and commercial success, already establishing him as one of the standout American storytellers of his generation. Beyond his literary and cinematic work, Cebo is the founder of UnOthr, a multidisciplinary studio and cultural brand dedicated to creating and adapting stories across books, film, events, and spaces. At its core, UnOthr is an ecosystem for authored worlds where story becomes the architecture for new ways of seeing ourselves and building culture. Dr. Fahamu Pecou, this guy, is the founder and executive director of ADAMA. He's an interdisciplinary artist and scholar whose works combine observations on hip hop, fine art, and popular culture. His paintings, performance art, and academic work address concerns around contemporary representations of Black men and how these images impact both the reading and performance of Black masculinity. He received his BFA at Atlanta College of Arts and a PhD from Emory University. He was named a Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres in 2024 by the country of France. He exhibits his art worldwide, he's known for that, in addition to lectures and speaking engagements at colleges and universities. As a little backstory, Fahamu put in 3 separate group texts about Sky Full of Elephants like a year and a half ago. And he was like, y'all gotta read this book. I don't read fiction. I don't read fiction.
I was hoping that there was.
There was. It was coming. Just dramatic pause for effect. And when he described its premise, I paused. I was like, this seems really, really cool, but it's fiction. And after he said, you have to read this book for the 3rd time, I read the book in 2 days, and I was like, why did I not read this book before now? Because the possibilities, I thought it was gonna be like nonsensical, it was fiction, it wasn't gonna make sense, but it all made so much sense to me. And it left me with so many questions about all that is possible. And I look forward to Dr. Fahamu Pecou and Cebo Campbell exploring all that is possible in today's conversation. Thank you both.
Bless you. Bless you.
What up, good people? How y'all feeling? It is absolutely an honor to be here. Thank you, Asohe, and again, thank you to the board and staff of ADAMA for everything you guys have done to coordinate and organize this event. I'm super thrilled to be here with my brother, Cebo. Before we get into it, I want to share a little backstory as well, because there's a little bit of momentum to how this all came to be. I got to give a big shout out to Ro Lawson, who brought Candace Stansfield to my studio in December of 2024. And we're sitting around and we're talking, and Candace tells us about this book that she's read. And she describes the premise of the book about all the white people walking into the nearest body of water and drowning themselves. And before she could finish her sentence, I had ordered the book. And like Asohe, I finished it in like a day and a half, and I was like, who is this dude in my head that has literally like put words to the things that I've been trying to paint and describe through my artwork for my entire career? And so I was like, I gotta meet this cat. And when we finally did have the opportunity to meet, you would have thought we grew up together. Like we're finishing each other's sentences, and the bromance has been real.
Real.
So I just want to warn y'all in advance. You're about to get some of that today.
Let me second what he said, because he's talking about it in practical terms, like we meet each other, but actually there are spiritual terms. And when I had written this book, and the first person that had like honored it was actually Charlie right here. And Charlie posted he'd done a painting, and he's like, I read this book, and it inspired me to do this work. And I started to have thoughts about it, and he asked me if I knew Fahamu, and I didn't know Fahamu. And so backstory is I had just done a DNA test, and I'd done African ancestry, and I had my mother's DNA, or my father's came first, and it was really strange because it said you're 0% African on your father's side. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think you read that right. And but then I get my mother's, and it said you're 100% Cameroonian. And I didn't know anything about it. And I think this is an imperative to the narrative of how we reconstruct our consciousness, is that not knowing where you're from is a big deal. And so and no one in my family knows, so not a single person they don't even know where Cameroon is. And so I typed it in to figure out something about it. And the first thing that came up was this mask. And the Cameroonians have a mask of the fawn, which is an elephant mask. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've written this book, and it feels like I'm looking through the lens of history. And as I'm looking at it, I get an alert on my phone, and it says, you've been tagged in something. I look, and the first thing I see is that African mask that Fahamu painted. And I was like, this is the guy Charlie's talking about. And I reached out to Fahamu, and I was like, bro, this is crazy. I just did this DNA test. It said I'm Cameroonian, and he said he was Cameroonian, and he said, what tribe do they say from you? And I said, mine says Bamaleke. He says his Bamaleke. And I was like, brother, it is more than just the sort of transaction of interpersonal relationships. It is a spiritual dynamic. And so brotherhood is beyond blood in this case.
There it is, right there. I mean,
yeah, you feel me? Oh, he gave me this pen, by the way, which is the mask of the fawn. He gave this to me like 2 days ago, and he didn't think I was going to wear it, but...
And it looks good. It
I
looks
know,
good.
I get stylish. You know,
So, we've had opportunities to talk and build and to talk about this book, to talk about other ideas, current projects, future projects, et cetera. But in our conversations, one of the things that I realized that I've never asked you about, which is where I want to begin this conversation today, is how did you first come to writing as your creative expression? I haven't heard you talk about your origins or your genesis as a writer, but I'm curious to know, like, what led you to that medium, and how did you decide it was something that you wanted to pursue?
I actually, when I grew up, I was more of an artist. I like to draw. I was drawing all the comic books when I was a kid, and I was a football player, and I thought of that as even an artistic expression, like evading people and reading defenses was artistic to me. And I for context, I think of art and creative as an exercise in critical thinking. So how do you have something that you want to bring to life or something that you want to overcome, and how do you think your way through it? And so everything to me was an art form, I didn't read either, so I wasn't reading a lot. Not a fiction. I wasn't gonna say nothing. But I wasn't reading a lot, and I was in high school, and they were teaching us, Shakespeare and Transcendentalist, and I'm reading all these different things, and I enjoyed them, but I didn't see myself in them, and I certainly didn't see myself artistically in them. And when I got to college, I was handed a copy of Sula. Shout out to Tony.
Tony.
And I had never felt letters on a page affect me physically until I read that book. And the story goes, some of you have heard this before, I read the first page and I shut the book, and I was like, what the hell was that? Like, what was that? It felt like someone had cast a spell over me. And then I opened it again, I tried to read it, and it was very quick for me to go, wait, she's using the same 26 characters that we all use, and yet she's making sort of compositions with sentence, with tonality that was just like it felt like she was speaking straight through me. And so I immediately went to try to look at interviews of her, and she talked often about this idea of writing into what she called the non-narrative, where she would go, you have a story that you're following, but as you follow that story, you uncover all these things about yourself. You conjure memory. You hear language in her words that you go, I've heard that when I was a kid, and no one speaks it anymore. And so I was like, I want to do that. I don't know how to do that, but I want to do that. And so the aim became writing to sort of, because it has enough space to do that work. I think you quite literally spend 8 hours reading a book, right? So you're going to live in the world that's created for a long time. And so I like the space that it created for the art to live. And then it became a question of how do you find your voice in the work? And that, luckily I played football, so I knew I was comfortable with practicing and failing and trying again. And so as I started to write, it was extremely difficult to read something that I just wrote and then read Toni Morrison. It's incredibly defeating. And so I was like, okay, broaden your horizons, read as much as you possibly can. And so I read everything. I went back and read all the stuff that I was reading in high school, and it became this dialogue between the things that I was writing and all these writers that existed before me. And I felt a communion, I felt a kinship, and then it was like, okay, this is my form, and I know this is the space that artistically I'm going to occupy.
That's what's up, man. I love the way you started out describing what art meant to you. It's problem solving. It's critical thinking, right? And without taking us too far off course from the conversation, I'd just like to ask you to build on that sentiment a little bit more, because this is something that I'm constantly thinking about in terms of what we're doing here at ADAMA, what I'm doing as an artist, what I do as an educator, right? Is how do we relanguage art, period, right? For consumption for our community, because oftentimes we have a perception of art as this thing that's over there. It's for them, it's not for me. But you were able to equate, playing football to an art form, right? Like writing to an art form. And there's many, many things that we do as individuals that we don't think of as an art form, but no one else can do it like you can do it. And I just want to ask you to expound on that a little bit, and then we'll jump back into the theme.
So, how many people in this room are artists or think of yourself as artists? I'm glad you raised your hand. How many of you think of the work as you do as that sits in the business world or the tech world, and you don't think of it as artistic, but it's like just what you do? Yeah. For some reason, all of my life, I've not been able to make the two things indistinguishable. Like they've always been the same thing to me. And I think it's because if you approach something with the intent to master it, and you're constantly overcoming what it takes to master it, it becomes its own form, and it's an artistic expression in which other people can engage. So if you're sitting there, you're making spreadsheets, somebody's going to read that spreadsheet, and at a certain point, they're going to identify you based on that spreadsheet. They're going to be like, that's Mark, he know how to make spreadsheets, right? That's an art form. And so I've always applied it to everything because I want it to feel like me. I want people to engage with something. Like imagine, for example, if somebody walked into your house today and you weren't in the house, okay? And they're walking through and they get to see what books you have on the shelves. They get to see what's in your kitchen. Maybe they get to go in your bathroom and you don't want them to go in there, right? They're learning who you are by the things that you make and the things that you produce at every turn. At every touch point that they have, they're going to learn something about you. And so for me, that's an identity expression, which is inevitably a pulling of something inside of you out into the world in which people can interact with. That's art. That's art. And so I encourage you, the next time I ask that question about who's an artist, everybody here should raise your hand.
Indeed, yeah. So I'm gonna bring it back to Tony now because, like you, I'm deeply moved by Toni Morrison. But one of the things that always resonated with me was the interview. I can't remember who she was interviewing with.
Was it the 60 Minutes one?
I think so. And she was doing this critique of black writing, particularly talking about Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. Yeah. And she asked this question, invisible to whom? Invisible to whom? Right? And she, goes into this thing about writing to black people in a way that affirms us, that doesn't, invoke whiteness or invoke white people or their gaze or their presence, right? And so I'm interested in knowing for you where that shows up, right? Because one of the things about Sky Full of Elephants is, the ways in which you've created a space for black people to be and to thrive that does not rely on white people in any capacity. And I wonder, if you could talk a little bit about the genesis of the story and what led you to begin creating this piece in the first place.
So there's layers to that. I'm not for living my life with whiteness as a contrast. I'm good. I'm good. But it is a value system, right? It's a value, and it creates a value system around who we are and how we operate. And so my work in my life is first and at once trying to decouple from that as much as possible. But the origin of the story came, some of you know this because I tell this story a lot. And if you've heard it a million times, just pretend like you haven't. But the idea came from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Everyone's heard this story, yeah. So, no? Are you weirded out that I just said that a little bit? So, you've seen Ferris Bueller. It's about this kid. He's like in high school and he wants to skip school. And he has the audacity to look at the camera, like straight at you while he's talking. which is wild. And then he gets his friend to skip school. He eventually changes his grades, sneaks into the school, changes his grades. He impersonates a cop at one point. He steals a Porsche, and he's just like flying down the street. And at a certain point in this movie, he's in a parade, right, like singing Donkashay. And I remember watching this movie, and I always wanted him to win. Like, all this mischief my man is getting into, I want him to win. And as I'm watching this movie one day, I'm in Brooklyn, and I suddenly go, what would happen if I took Ferris Bueller and I replaced him with Trayvon Martin, right? Like, what story would come out of that? And I know the answer to that. All of y'all know the answer to that. That's, you immediately go, that story wouldn't exist. And I was like, but why? Why can't we even imagine a kid having mischief that we honor and celebrate and root for if he's black? Why can't we imagine that? Why can't I imagine Trayvon still in a Porsche? And us being like, go, my dude, go.
Right,
like,
right.
you know, opposed to being like, bro, like, slow down.
Right,
They're going to get
Look
you.
out.
You know, look out. And it was really, to have that thought was really impactful to me. And it like clung to me for a long time. And it ended up being the catalyst for this book, because I thought, just as I always do, I go back to Toni's work. And she talked about writing outside of the gaze. And I was like, well, let's remove it. If you remove the gaze entirely, how does that translate in your reality? And it changes everything. It changes all the dynamics of one, not just how you operate, but you suddenly can see the vacancy. You go, oh, I wasn't even in that space, and I didn't even think about that space, because we aren't really afforded that space, because we're so focused on our survival that it's hard to get beyond it. But our ancestors never did. Our ancestors, they operated from a place of abundance. And so they had space and time to look up at the stars. They had space and time to develop a language with their spirit. Like, they had it, and it feels like we don't. And so when I started to write this book, and honestly just in my life in general, I was like, how am I creating space for myself? And I can expand out as far as I'm able, and then I rub up against something, and it's always whiteness. And I'm like, all right, I can't defeat this on my own. But I can write a book that is an invitation for all of us to try to figure it out, you know, because I think we have to. I think we must.
I love that, and I love this way that you're, you know, again, kind of positioning how we are ultimately able to see ourselves in a similar way. You know, the work that I was doing asked a similar kind of question, like, who are we when white people ain't looking, right? And you were able to remove that gaze in a really interesting way.
It was hard, bro. It was hard.
But the novel opens with a premise that's immediately provocative, right? Like, all white people in the United States go to the nearest body of water and drown themselves.
Yeah.
And then we begin this journey of remaking the world. When you had this initial idea, like, did you see the story unfolding, or did it reveal itself to you as you
That's a good
wrote?
question. It's a sort of a combination of the two. There were things that I knew were vacancies that we'd have to occupy. So an example is the airport. And I was like, what would an airport look like if there are no white people? And I'm like, it wouldn't be a Delta. There wouldn't be a TSA.
Damn, not
right?
Delta.
Not Delta's got to go.
Can we keep Delta?
Respect to Delta. Respect to Delta. Respect
Can
to
we
Delta.
keep Delta?
There wouldn't be Spirit. My guy said they would only be Spirit. Damn. Damn. I hope there wouldn't be all these. Spirit don't do drinks. So I ain't trying to do Spirit. But the exercise in trying to figure that out was like, I knew I didn't have the answers, but I knew I wanted to go there, but I knew I didn't have the answers. And so maybe in the writing of the book, I'll arrive to some of them. And, you know, I'm very lucky. I grew up in a very small town in Florida. I have people here. I see you. And it's called Panama City Beach. I'm sure y'all spring break there, looking for trouble.
PCB.
Right. And but I grew up, there's the beach side where all the white people live, right? And then on the other side of the bridge is where most of the black people, people of color. We live with a bunch of Vietnamese people, and it was just they all lived on this side, and they serviced the beach, so they would be the ones that were working on the beach. And we grew up. I have a bunch of brothers and sisters. My mom has a bunch of brothers and sisters, so I got a bunch of cousins, and we would spend the summers at my grandmother's house, just like chilling. We couldn't go inside because my grandma was like, none of y'all are coming in. And she would have us, there were like trees in the yard. There's a church on this side, and there's a big swath of land. And there was like pear trees and pecan trees, plum trees. And so we'd spend the summer just like eating fruit, making up games. And that sounds familiar, right? But to sit and have the time, space, and safety to go, I'm going to make up a game. Mm-hmm. You don't have that in your life right now. Mm-hmm. Your kids probably don't even have it right now. That to me is the differentiator. It's the thing that when I was writing this, I'm like, that's if I can pull that essence out and I can extract that and I can expand that into a way of life, what does that look like? Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of what Mobile would be. Mm-hmm. Is like that's just a very small thing of going, I have space to think, I have space to imagine, and in my imagine I can make anything I want. Mm. And I can do it. I mean, we had a game called the car game, bro. It was like, if a car turned down the street, you had to run and jump over the fence into the church, or you got hit. And then you couldn't play no more. Right? We was like 6, right? And so when I talk about like thinking critically, you don't have the space. And so I wanted to build a world around that conceptually, that you go, if our culture is free to move and we have space to create, I don't think things would be the same. I don't think buildings would be the same. Mm-hmm. Our culture suggests that we like to be in community, we need, like in communal spaces together, and yet buildings are constructed in such a way that look like filing cabinets. I don't think the infrastructure of the roads would be the same. I don't think the way we handle our food would be the same. I said this yesterday, if you were in Cobb County, you heard me. You are all living in someone else's imagination. Mm-hmm. They made this up for you, and you're living in it. And they're saying you don't get to imagine, because if you do, you're going to create another one. And so the book was like, imagine, man. Like, imagine it. And when we do, and we can have conversations like this, we can architect a pathway to the thing that we imagine. We can go, I've seen it, and now I'm going to build the strategy to bring it to life.
Interesting. I'm trying to not go off the...
It's all right.
Track of the questions, but you're like you're adding things that's really making me think about some of the ideas. One of the things that's really interesting. Well, actually, I'm gonna come back to that because I want to take us through the narrative a little bit. At the heart of this story, we follow the lives of Charlie and his daughter Sydney, right? And
y'all don't know how much my DMs are about Sydney. And so whoever said that, it's like it was calling me.
I felt it too. I felt it. But at the core of the story is this relationship and this journey that they are going on. And not just the physical journey of them, going across the United States, but also this interior journey that they are both forced to go on. And so when you were writing these characters, for you, what felt like the biggest shifts they had to make?
Values. So values are fundamental to both of them. So for context, Charlie was based off of my father. So my biological father, who was he was quite a gifted person. He's one of those people that can just figure everything out. He could build houses from scratch. He could pour the foundation. He could do the plumbing, the electrical. He's so talented. And yet he was profoundly unfulfilled. And he could, I think he could feel the radius of his potential and know that he could never reach it. And what that did to him mentally, I think, was is what happens to a lot of us, frankly. And so I pictured him as like a sun, and that the radius of that potential being the brightest edge of that sun. And if you imagine a sun, it's like when it's shining bright, it's life-giving. But if it collapses on itself, it's destructive. And that's what he became, this sort of destructive spirit in our lives. And I was like, okay, what would, if my dad had fulfilled himself, what impact would he actually have on this world, right? Like, if he had nothing obstructing that profound imagination, one, because he went to prison just like Charlie did, he wouldn't have been taken from us, and we would have had a dad, right? He wouldn't have been taken from my mom, and she would have had a husband. But he also wouldn't have been taken from the community and the things that he can contribute. He probably built 10 houses for people and affect the arc of the generations to follow. But that was taken. And so for us, we associate that being taken with this idea of like criminalization, right? And we associate criminalization with now they're no longer part of society. But what is society? How do you determine civilization if you haven't even been civil? And so that value system is broken. And and I think it's in part because we are in contrast to this backdrop, this very bright white backdrop, and they determine a value system. And I say they, I don't necessarily mean white people, I mean whiteness. But white people seem to be possessed by whiteness, and so
Some black people too.
right, it's real, and so that creates a system that determines your worth. And I realize what I'm about to say is giving away a little bit of my next book, but the idea, I thought that was somebody clapping for Sydney. The idea is really simple. When you think of possession, you think of demonic possession. You think of like the girl from Exorcist or something. But the truth is when we were taken from the continent, we were possessed. And if possession is to lose everything about who you were and be filled up with someone else, we are all in the process of that. We don't have any connection to our original land. We don't have any connection to our original language, any of the original food. And our job is, I think, in order to not be possessed, is to constantly excavate that history and try to find maybe a truth or a point of origin. And in that, I think it reframes our value system. Like I said, I grew up in a place where time and space and food felt abundant. I didn't have anything that gave me a frame of reference until I went to the beach. For context, my parents when I was young, they wouldn't let us go to the beach. We had a kid, a cousin who was drowned in an undertow. So she would never let us go to the beach, which meant we was going, right? And so to get to it was a bay, it actually was the beach, but to get to it, you had to walk across MLK, make your way across this like sort of streets that meander, and they go from being like rigid to having like lanterns and stuff, and beautiful grass. I'd never seen houses like that. I'd never seen houses that big and have spaces in them that weren't functional. Like they were just like a library or like they weren't the place you go watch TV, right? They had other ideas. And then the craziest thing happened. And I want you guys to hear this because I was young and this is one of my earliest memories that really struck me. When I walked down the hill to go to where the beach was, again, remember, we didn't go. It was the first time in my life when I saw the water that I had ever seen the horizon.
Oh, wow.
Do you still feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To look as far as you can until you can see no further. Here we are in a place where you're surrounded by buildings or hills or all these different things. Your view is always obstructed. And so it affected me because I was like, it literally made my knees weak to see it. It took my breath away.
How old were you?
I was about 9 or 10.
Wow.
And I was like, I couldn't believe it. Scared me to think that the world could be that vast, that anything could be that vast. And then I realized all the houses blocked all of us from ever seeing it. They owned the land. And so we had no access to see as far as we could see.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I knew that when I was young. I was like, yo, this is fucked up. Like, what's this? And then the people who own the houses, they called the police on us. Had to take us home. And my mom was like, get in there. You about to get the butt whooped because you weren't supposed to be at the beach to begin with. But that was the first time I was like, but Mom, did you see these houses? Do you see the things that they have? And it gave me suddenly a shift in my value system that I wasn't prepared for. Up until that moment, I was perfectly content.
Wow. So this lends itself to this idea back to what we were talking about at the outset around imagination, and when someone puts a cap on your imagination, what that does to you. I'm trying to be mindful of time, and I want to make sure that we get into a few of the questions around the book, but I also want to just let our audience know that we'll take a moment to open it up to questions from you guys as well. So just keep that in mind. But there's something really compelling about the way masculinity shows up in this book. right? And the relationships between and amongst men, right? One of the relationships that is really compelling to me is the relationship between the king and Charlie, and the ways in which he sees how Charlie is broken, and he doesn't look at him with pity, right? But he understands where he's coming from, and he challenges him to rise into the fullness of himself. Similarly, the relationship between Zoo and Sailor is a really compelling, relationship, and unfolds in ways that we may not expect. And I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about those relationships, that the kind of intimacy that exists amongst and within men in this new world that is distinct from the ways in which we've come to understand masculinity in the one that we currently exist in.
Yeah, this is one of the most important parts of this book, because I have brothers, and yet between us, there's not a lot of vulnerability, right? There's not a lot of, like, I very rarely can say to my brother, "How you feeling? How's your heart?" That type of stuff, and get a response that's true, opposed to a response that's like, "I'm good, I'm good." And so our bodies have been in a position of either protecting spaces that would otherwise be invaded, or being brutalized. And when I say brutalized, I don't always mean like getting beat over the head with sticks. I mean you're working for 12 hours. That is a form of brutalization on the body. And so if that trauma is conscious, one, and then physical, two, it means that you have to guard against all other inputs. And so you say things like, "I'm good, I'm straight." And that I think diminishes language. I think it diminishes the language of feeling, and I think it needs to expand. I didn't know this until I met my wife. She's the one that was, and I do think in the book it says very explicitly that all men should sit at the feet of a woman and learn some stuff. Indeed. And so my wife, I would come home, I'd be, not talking as I do or just in my head. And she would say, "What's going on?" And I'd be like, "I'm good, I'm straight." And she goes, "You can't talk like that. You need to find another language. You need to find another language, because that I don't have any orientation to what I'm okay means." And she would sit with me and talk me through it. And she goes, "Tell me what's happening, and then we'll figure out language for it." And I was like, "Well, I just feel like I got a lot of stuff on my mind, and I'm just parsing through all of it, and I don't have the words to tell you all the things that I'm thinking about, but it's a lot." And she goes, "Why don't you just say, 'I'm out to sea'? Because if you're out to sea, that means I could be on shore and I could see you, and I know that you're out there floating, but you'll come back. Because if you're not, if I don't know where you are and you're lost, if you're not saying that to me, you're just saying you're okay, my only frame of reference is he's isolated." And she goes, this is the only way that we can communicate and create connective tissue between us. And I go, this is my wife now, so I'm like, you're the closest person to me, but how does that translate to my friends? The people that I care about, the people that I want to see succeed. I see their struggles, they see my struggles, but we're not actually communicating. And so what I wanted was for all of them, all the men in the story, to at once see each other, so I could see where you came from. One of the first things that Sailor says to Charlie is, "I know you was in prison. You're wearing it. I know what it looks like." Right? He can see you, and then he can help you find language. He talks to Charlie about how to think about his child, and in so doing, Charlie could, in his vulnerability, could learn a language to speak back to him. So by the time he meets the king, it takes it up a notch, where the king is the ultimate sort of, like I say, you should call it a nuclear family, where he's got kids, he's got a wife, he's got a home, and Charlie can use that as like an archetype to aspire to, but also a framework to develop a new language for what that means. And so there's a scene, and I'm spoiling a little bit, but there's a scene where Charlie first puts the headphones on for the machine, the prototype of the machine, and he feels all the things that he's been avoiding, all the things that he's deferred, and he collapses into the king's arms. And the king just says, "I got you. I got you." And I think as brothers, uncles, men, all of us, the masculine energy, there is not enough vulnerability between us to be seen. You make yourself invisible because you're hiding behind a language that doesn't express itself. And so I wanted to redefine that in the book.
It's much appreciated.
Of course, of course, of course.
On a similar note, I also think the dynamic between and amongst women in the novel is really, really powerful. You know, when we get to the Kingdom of Mobile, it's centered around this sort of matriarchal structure.
Yes.
And the ways in which black women are written is a stark contrast to the white female characters in the novel, right? Like there's a deep fragility and fearfulness and what's the word I'm looking for? Just erratic nature to the white female characters, including Sydney, right? Which is a stark contrast to Queen Vivian and to Nona and to Serafina, who have this sense of self-possession that I think also, you know, catalyzes a unique relationship between the men and the women. But I'd like for you to speak a little bit more about, you know, how you came to choose to write these gender roles and these gendered roles, again, in a way that is, you know, in a stark contrast to the society that we currently exist in many ways.
I think it's naturally in stark contrast. I think it just exists that way. My mother is a Leo, and she does not play, and she is the matriarch of our family. Every snap, I love it. I'm a profound and stark believer that we should have a matriarchal society, not a patriarchal one.
Ashe.
And I'll explain it really simply. If you take the form that a patriarchal society takes, it is pyramidic, right? It takes on triangular shape, which is to say, at a certain point, there's one person at the top and everyone else falls under. And that person has their back to you going, follow me and I'll lead you where you want to go. Which means that we are running blindly towards one person gaining everything. A matriarchal society is circular in its shape, and the woman sits at the center, and she makes sure that you have everything that you need. The difference between those is one of those amounts to scarcity, and the other one amounts to abundance. And I think about that when I was thinking about Queen, I was thinking about Nona, and I was thinking about them as givers. That is what my mom is. You don't understand. If I pulled out my phone right now and I showed you a photo of my mom's Thanksgiving dinner, y'all be like, let's go right now. Get the bus. We're going south, right? Because she literally she's a caterer, and she will make food for like 70 people, bro. And if you went into the kitchen before she starts, you'll be like, there ain't no food in here. All she's got is ingredients. Like, I don't know what to do with this bag of flour. Like, what are we doing? And she make cakes, pies, all of it, bro, all of it. And I marvel at it because I go, that to me, there's no more valuable an entity in this world than someone that could do that. Someone that can do that. And we have taken the black woman in particular, the one who is, because when I think of blackness, I think of its greatest power being creativity, that it can generate stuff. It can generate endlessly. The black woman, who is the original generator, can generate anything she wants, whenever she wants. And in a world that wants to both homogenize us and make scarcity, she is the enemy. They're like, we got to suppress her at all costs. But if you build the world around her, think about how different it would be. And so I was like, okay, there's an essay called the Combahee River Statement. It's written I think it was written in the 70s, maybe late 60s. And they basically said that while they were associated with the Black Panther movement, and they was like, we're rooting for our brothers, we are women. And we have a different set of needs. And then they're looking at the feminist movement, and they're like, while we love what you're doing, we're also black. And you're not accounting for our needs in that either. So they created their own. And when I read it, you know, I was struck by, it was like, if you take their demands, the things that they need, and you make that our focus, make that a priority, it raises everybody. It makes everyone's lives better. And so I thought about this with Scott. I think this will be a part of essentially everything that I ever create, is that we have to gather around the woman. We have to gather around the woman and know that everything that we require, knowledge, memory, sustenance, it will derive from that source, and then it will move outwards and make bands and bands and bands of protection for all of us.
That's what's up. Y'all make some noise for that. There's a way that, and I'm going to ask this last question and open it up for the audience. But one of the things I know you've spoken about this, and I've heard this from a number of people who I've shared the book with as well. The way you chose to end the book, the way you chose to wrap things up, is so.
That's the second DM I get. It's usually it's like, I hate Sydney. What happened at the end?
But you know, for me, I appreciated the open-endedness of it. Right, I like that it didn't wrap it up in a pretty bow for you. And I wanted to ask what led you to that choice, and what do you hope stays with people who read this novel when it's complete? Like, what is the conversation that you hoped to spark?
This one.
I'll take that.
This one. And I mean that. I mean that sincerely. I knew the ending wasn't going to be a bow because nothing in our lives ever is. Can you do me a favor? Can you hold the book up so everybody can see the cover? I want you to look at this cover if you can see it, and it's got these sort of bolts of lightning going into this person's head and out of it. I chose this cover because I thought the book itself was the frequency. That when you read it and you get to that last page, the question that you ask next is, where do we go from here? You have to answer it.
Yeah.
We have to answer it.
Yeah.
And if I answered it in that book, which I might answer it in the movie, but I didn't answer it in the book. I was like, if I answered in this book, it's going to put us at a deficit. It's going to take everything that anyone's reading. It's all the things that you've learned, because I'm trying to pour as much actual history into the book as I can. So everything that you're learning, if I wrapped it all up and gave you a conclusive ending, it will feel like entertainment versus education. And so I was like, I need people to feel something with this, because I'm pouring everything. And I want you guys to know, I used to when I was writing, I know this doesn't sound crazy, but I would hear Toni Morrison's voice in my head, and the only thing she would say is, "You better not let up. You better not let up." And I'm like, all right, I'm trying. I'm gonna kill these white people. Like, it's happening. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I will say this because I think this is funny. I know we gotta go, but this is funny. So I own an agency in New York, creative agency. And we do projects for luxury hotels. So I'm always in the room with, like, you know, these billionaire hoteliers. And when I wrote the book, you know, I'm still in these meetings, and and I'm always only the black person in these rooms. And this guy, he's like, "Oh, Cebo, I was looking at your Instagram. I heard you wrote this book. What's it about?" And I was like, "Well, it's his father and daughter." It was so hard for me to tell people what this book was about. It was so hard. But I realized over the course of maybe the first 2 months of touring with the book is that I have to say the hard stuff.
Yeah.
I have to say it, even when it hurts to say it. And I have to say it, you know, full-chested, because the white people aren't the only people listening. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And Toni told you.
Right, she told me, don't let up. And so I've come to be able to speak confidently and hopefully articulately about the fact that this book ain't about white people. It's about black people.
Yeah, Ashe.
And so it's to black people. And then because of that, it sort of frees me from the guilt that I feel when I say all the white people killed themselves. First of all, I didn't kill them, they killed themselves.
Yeah.
I did not do that. And deservedly in some cases. So, but it sort of set me free to be able to speak openly about it, because I know I'm speaking to y'all.
That's what's up. All right, so I know that, look, he already got his hand up. They ready. So we have a couple of mics that we'll pass around, and we'll take some questions. I will ask, like, please be considerate of the room. There's a lot of people who want to engage with Cebo. Like, let's make it a question. If it doesn't have an inflection at the end, if there's not a question mark at the end, it's not a question.
And let me stop right there, Fahamu. If it's okay for people who have questions, if you can meet us versus us trying to finagle through everyone, that would be great.
Hey, first of all, thank you so much. The book is incredible. When I was in elementary school, the teachers told my mom, what does he do? Because he has such a great imagination. And then I read your book and I'm like, no, I don't.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you
No,
do.
I appreciate that. There are a lot of implications about what I feel like this book was born out of. Of course, the implications of whiteness and all that, but particularly parenting. The relationship between Charlie and Sydney, and the relationship between Sailor and Zoo. And there was one point in the book where Sailor is talking to Charlie, and not to give it away, but he says, as a parent, we should, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but as a parent, we should let our children be who they are, and we should be the guardrails to allow them the freedom to be who they are while we just protect them. That is so beautiful, and so you what in your childhood or as a parent, what do you connect to as far as parenting is related in this book with the relationship between Charlie and Sydney and the relationship between Sailor and Zoo? Like, those relationships are so vivid, aside from everything else. And the other thing I'll say is, you wrote the book in such a way where I could see the airport in Chicago. I could see Mobile, Alabama. Like, you've written it in such a visual way. Like, I'm reading it, and it's like I'm not just reading. It's like it's happening to me. So I appreciate that. But also for the parenting aspect, what do you connect that to, as far as you writing that part in the book is concerned?
Well, one, I really appreciate you saying that. It means a great deal to me. So I was raised by my mother, who, she kept a belt on her, and then I was raised by my grandmother, who also kept a belt on her. It was just usually at a distance, and they had this sort of way of parenting where my grandmother was like, "Go outside, play, and if you need me, I'm here." And there was never a sense of you can't do that, except when it applied to white people. Then she was like, "Stay away." And then, my mom was a bit more contained. The environment was more contained. And so when I had my first kid, I was like, well, how am I going to do it? How am I going to create space for them to feel free, and space for them to feel free in a sociological context, right? Like, they can leave our neighborhood and still feel that they can have the audacity that I wish I had. And so it's if I'm honest, it's still a struggle to do it as a parent. It's still a struggle to look at my daughter and go, I want you to do it, but also, like, be careful, that. And so what I've said to her is, my eldest daughter, she's going to college next year, and since she was like 6 years old, I was like, let's just go see the world. I'm going to show you everything that I have access to, so you can decide for yourself. And I'm going to put you in rooms that will feel awkward to you. I'll put you in spaces that maybe you feel like you shouldn't be in, so you know what it feels like to be in them. And I wanted to widen the container of her existence as much as possible, and then whatever she decides in it, I'm going to rock with it. But if you've made the decision, the pool of choices too narrow, they're only going to choose what you've presented. And so that is both an exercise in my own expansion as a contribution to hers, if that makes sense. And so that I tried to write into the book, because it's a study. It's like a constant study trying to figure that out. And I have teenagers and I have toddlers. I have 3-year-old twins. I know, bro, I'm tired. I'm tired. But the exercise is still the same. It's like, how do I make enough space for them to actualize themselves?
Hi, fam.
Hello.
My name is Brandy Helena.
I remember you. You came yesterday.
I did.
Yep.
I did. I co-own a anti-racism book club for white women specifically, and it came out of the 2024 election and the 42% of white women that voted for VP Harris, right? We wanted to provide the context, the words, the confidence, the verbiage for those women to be in spaces that we are not invited to, right? To be able to speak to those MAGA women or whoever, right? As a Black queer woman, I'm not invited to those spaces. So part of those conversations that we have are about white supremacy, obviously. And so in that process, we talk about your book and what the world will look like without white supremacy and how long it would take for white supremacy to be dismantled. And so in the context of your book, which first I do want to honor the fact that you gave Black people liberation without sacrifice. I love that for us, right? But to me, in the context of the book, I'm curious, how long do you think it would take for society that still existed to be able to dismantle white supremacy without white people? Thinking about things like respectability politics, right? How long would that sit with us? The Black church, how long would those those holds have on us, the things that we've done to conform to survive. How long would that hold exist on us without white people being present?
If I'm honest, I think at least a generation. I think we're right now trying to teach our children how to imagine differently, because we are holding on to the burdens of all the things that we've learned. I imagine it in my mind like a kite and an anchor, where your existence is, you're trying to be a kite, but you've got this anchor that's holding you down, and that is the I would articulate it, it is like trying to grow up in the form of white supremacy. And so all the sort of the containers that hold you can't move them. And so you don't know how to expand beyond them. And you're trying to get your kids to. And I think all the white people were gone. That doesn't go away. Like that doesn't, even like we're doing this, along with the film, we're doing this vertical series that is 1 month after the event, and it explores the interior life changes of black people in like very short snippets. And there's this one where it's a black family, and they decide on which mansion they want now. And they've been living in like a little apartment, and they're like, we going out in the woods, we're gonna get us a big house. But when they get the big house, the things that have made them a family are now disturbed. They used to sit around the table and share food and laugh and joke at this tiny table. Now they're at a table where they can't even hear each other. And so do you want that, right? Do you want those changes? And if you do want those changes, what portions of who you are do you retain? It isn't about finding, britches. It's about healing. And if you're not healed, you're going to carry it forward. And I think it's going to take us a while to get through the processing of those things that we do need to heal. But I do think we could be doing that work now. I think we are doing that work now. And in a way, it almost feels like everyone's like, it's going to happen. They're going to be gone in like 2 weeks. So get ready. Get ready. The amount of people that's like, Cebo, can you turn the switch on? Like, do you have it in your garage? Right? So I think we are anticipating, and I know you all feel it. You gotta feel it right now, where it's like something is coming. Something is coming. I feel connective tissue that I didn't feel before. I feel reorientation that I didn't feel before. And so if you're picturing it and you feel it, that doesn't mean the burden doesn't go away, but you can set up the future for those who will come. Of course. Hello.
Hello. Thank you again for such a beautiful story.
Of course.
But when you think about the expansiveness of the world that you've created, can you talk to us about how you plan to continue to expand in film and in the verticals you've talked about, and how the adaptations will look different than the book that we read?
Yeah, it's a good question. As I said, I've never really kind of thought of myself as a writer. I always thought of myself as an artist that applies art to the medium. And so when I started to write this book, I knew that I was going to I knew there was going to be a bunch of ways that we can engage with the work. The novel is just too large a form for everybody to have 8 free hours to sit with the book. And so I was like, well, I can make a vertical series, I can make a film, but I don't want them to just be a pure one-to-one adaptation, but can I expand on it and give you not just a new dimension, but a completely new entry point into that. And so I'm gonna tell y'all something, but you cannot let it leave this room. Dr. Love's right back there in the back. She gonna lock you all up in this place. So this is in the film. In the film, they have when you get to Mobile, everyone wears paint, like tribal paint. And the way they constructed this tribal paint is it actually is it activates the melanin in your skin. Then creates like a photosynthesis. And so it absorbs sunlight and gives you all of the sustenance that you need. And then at nighttime, if you can feel, you can turn it to light. Because I had this picture in my head that was like, we are melanated, which means that we're carbon, which means that in the dark, it should be illuminated. Right? So we're black in this world, light in the other. That shows up in the book, but doesn't show, or shows up in the film, but doesn't show up in the book. And so there's a bunch of things like that where I had those ideas, but the medium wasn't right to tell it. You feel me? And so to see a whole bunch of black people suddenly illuminate. Come on.
Can we pause for a second? You said we are dark in this world and light in the other.
Yes.
That shit is powerful.
So think about it. Think about it like this. Any person that you know is a real good creative, like yourself. you draw people to you. And imagine that in the creative space, there is no light, it's just dark. And those who want to be creative or don't know about creativity, they are drawn to the illumination. They're drawn to the music that they like. They're drawn to the paintings, the books that they like. And it's because you shine so brightly. They can see you and they can trust that you'll guide them where they want to go. And so I really believe that. And I believe when we're creative and we express ourselves artistically or otherwise, we shine so brightly that we draw in the things that serve us.
Whoop, there it is. One more? No, you can clap. Yeah. I ain't gonna stop your clap. How y'all doing? I'm Rodney Perry.
I've been listening to your podcast.
Thank you.
You stopped doing it, but I used to listen to it.
I appreciate that. Emily said hello, by the way.
Thank you.
It's a particular page in your book that really struck me and felt like the reason why I had to read this book. And it was a conversation between Charlie and Seraphine, where she says the thing about voice, Charlie Brunton, is ain't nothing inside of them but light. They can't figure out how to set free. And you use this metaphor of voice within the book, specifically in this conversation, and I believe that's a great and perfect description of how I felt post college, feeling like, oh, I have this degree now, the job search is kind of funny. I just do a lot of things that really don't amount to anything. And what do I do now? What direction do I have? I felt like I just did a lot, felt like I did a lot in my quote unquote college career, and it doesn't feel like it's amounting to much. And what do I do with that? And as I've traversed what that felt like a black hole to me, because black holes are things that light can't escape. That's what I thought about when you wrote that, and I wrote that around that time in like 2017 in the journal. And so I was like, oh my God, somebody finally sees it and gets it. How would you describe or tell young boys and men and just people who maybe have that same feeling that that's a part of the message of the book? How would you, I guess, suggest for them to read it, because that's how they're describing the place they're in life?
That void is real. Like I had a similar sensation throughout parts of my life where I feel like, one, that it's like a collapse into yourself, and it translates into that sort of invisibility that I was talking about, where once you've collapsed into yourself, it's like no matter what you're making, it's like people aren't reacting to it. They aren't reacting to anything you're doing, and you start to feel like the invisible man. My answer to that is, for you specifically, is something that you've already been doing, and I think it's probably catalytic, is brotherhood. I find that when I do feel like things that I am doing, they feel hollow, I go to the people that matter most to me, and I try to articulate that to them. And I let them see me and see me in that vulnerability. And the craziest things happens, bro. They pull you out of it. They pull you out of that feeling. They remind you of who you are. They breathe life back into you, and they give you the energy to get back to creating and to be seen. I would say to every man in this space and every woman in this space, but because I'm a man, I'm speaking specifically to men, like, get you a brotherhood. Get you a brotherhood. And that doesn't necessarily mean just peers. Get you an elder, get you somebody that's younger than you. The younger person is going to show you how to be free. The elder person is going to reorient you to all of your possibilities, and your brothers are going to give you energy, right? All of it, you have to have that circle of people around you, and it will build you out of whatever void that you feel. Make no mistake, white supremacy is intent to compartmentalize every single one of you, break you apart, and make you feel alone. They will make you feel alone, and you are not. You are not. And so, brother, if you ever feel that way, come holler at me. I got you. Like, we'll go to a museum or and like vibe out. You know, Fahamu is one of those people for me. Like, when I feel a certain way or I have questions, he was talking to me yesterday about the Orisha for his head, and I'm just sitting here like, oh my God, tell me more. And I want to engage because it's illuminating me. And I use that term specifically because it feels like I'm brightening when he says those things. Charlie's the same way. I sat and had a conversation with Charlie. I came away from it, and I felt like I had been elevated. That's what brotherhood is about. And I think we're always going to feel those sensations, and it's all right. But if you got people around you that can help pull you out, I think you are fortified against all opposition. Thank you. Yeah, of course.
Thank you. So before we close out and shift to the gallery, I just have one last question for you. As an artist, oftentimes in the process of creating, in the process of making, we discover things about ourselves that we didn't necessarily set out to do. And I wanted to ask you, in creating this work, what surprised you the most about yourself, that you discovered in yourself, that came out of making this thing?
You're asking the hard ones, huh? I like it. When I wrote this, I was terrified. Terrified. My wife was like, "You're gonna get shot. You're gonna get shot. You're gonna get shot. Don't do it." Even my mom was like, she was looking at my book tour stops and she was like, "Don't go there. Don't go there." I was afraid. I was really, really afraid. But I wasn't afraid that someone was gonna shoot me. I was afraid to sit in a seat like this and have these conversations. I didn't feel like I was a person to be having them. I didn't feel like I had language for that. I didn't feel like I was a lived experience enough to have that. And my wife would be like, "Just sit in this chair, man. You wrote the book. Sit in the chair." And so I started to sit, and I sit across from people, and I've had a tour all over the world. I mean, I've gone all over. And I've heard every conversation. When in Marrakesh, my man was talking about slavery, and he was like,
Right.
why are people not as expensive as they used to be? And I'm like, what are you saying to me, bro? It's crazy.
Wow.
It's crazy. Crazy stuff. He was in the room. It was wild. But I can now sit in a seat and have those conversations and feel confident, not because of who I am, but because I know my antenna is up. And I know that I'm listening. If someone asks me the question like you asked me, I'm responding not just with me. I'm just my antennas. I'm listening to you. I'm listening to them, and whatever is on my heart to say, I'll say it. And there's a trust that has to happen to arrive to that place, and that trust is surprising to me, And I'm lucky. I've got people around me that have shown me how to do that. Right? Look, right here, sitting right there. That's my cousin. Her name's Tanya, and Tanya is remarkable because she grew up in a very, very town that's smaller than my town. And she's representative for Georgia, for Conley, is what I'm saying that right? Conyers, right? And to see people move like that, you go, one, anything's possible. And then I can watch her talk to crowds of people and then come play spades and never lose who she is. And I thought, okay, I'm going to sit in this seat. I'm going to hold on to who I am and just listen and respond. And that's the seat I'm supposed to be in. And that was a surprise.
Like Tony told you, don't let up.
Don't let up.
Yeah, man. Thank you all.
Don't let up. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. This was an amazing conversation. Another round of applause. I know you guys, took from this. I want to say first, thank you for being here. Cebo, thank you for this conversation. Thank you guys for coming out. I think this is one of our largest groups that we have. We want to see you again. Would be lovely. We have amazing talks that we have here. Please come and check out, our museum. Check out the current exhibition, Spinning a Yarn. It is our flower and our seed, components to beautiful women and their art, especially as we celebrate, of course, Women's History Month. We also want to say thank you to Stage Wing. We want to say thank you to Waha. The teas that you've had today, we want to appreciate that as well. Thank you for Village Books for being out here today, and I know we're going to have a signing, but also check out the books there as well. And at the end, support us. We have our QR code up. It's ADAMA ATL. Oh, I have a little something. Please be sure. Okay, that's writing. Okay, so please also be sure to check out our. We have beautiful teas and merchandise in the museum. Take a chance to check it out as well. And also, support us. We're at adamaatl.org. Check us out, continue to support us, be with us, enjoy that. And for me, taking away from this and seeing all of us, we talk about community all the time. But we really have to practice that. And not just, this continual thing, and I agree with you, there's a movement I feel that's coming. I want us to be always remember that we are community, and if it's not for us, I don't know who else is coming to save us. So continue to be with each other, meet people here, continue to support each other. So thank you again for coming out, and enjoy. Thank you.
Also,
ADAMA
thank you,
board.
Atlanta.
Oh.